All right, folks, welcome back. Welcome if you're new. This is the Something Ventured podcast. I am Kent Lindstrom. I'm your host. This is part 2 of my conversation with Sarah Marie, who is an entrepreneur and an executive, and who had a non-traditional path to Silicon Valley, by which I mean she didn't go to Stanford or Harvard or Princeton, made it here anyway, founded a company, and is now CEO, co-founded a company, is now CEO of that successful and growing company. Thanks for coming back. Thanks for listening. This is the Something Ventured podcast. This is part 2 of my conversation with Sarah Marie. And one way to access it is listen to a design podcast or whatever it might be. So
yeah, so that was the that's still the goal today, is to like take a piece of what we have here and share it and spread it and make sure that other people feel like they're connected and they can achieve it too.
Yeah.
Because it does suck to be in those jobs where you feel like you can't get away, but you know you can do more.
Right.
And even if you can't leave, even if San Francisco isn't for everybody. Yeah. Maybe you don't want to, but you still want to be connected to that community.
Yep.
We wanted to give people that space because we felt like it was our responsibility. Because we had been given this opportunity to travel from Minnesota to California and get ourselves from where we were to where we are. We need to give back. We need to make sure that that's crystal clear, that like, this is our goal for you. Right. We want to make this a good place. Yeah. And I mean, across the board, people all over have been saying the same thing. Like, I've been so isolated. It's so nice to have this to listen to. Even if I can't talk about it, at least I can hear what other people are thinking and know that there are people who are like-minded out there.
By the way, that's been radio for a long time. Like from a long time ago, like the kid under his covers, like listening to the baseball game or the weird music that his parents won't let him or her parents won't let her listen to. Like that's like a thing that radio's done for a long time. Like make people feel connected to something.
Yeah, yeah. So that's what we were trying to do with it. Because I mean, people still listen to the radio, but it's so overdone, and people are commercializing it too much. And that's the thing that scares me about podcasting too now, is it going to be too commercialized? Is it heading in that direction?
Well, you're in charge. Like, what's going to happen? Like, you run a podcast network.
I know. That's the other thing, too.
You're
is
a podcast.
How do I stay?
You're the executive.
Yeah,
like, what are you going to do?
How do we keep it? How do we keep that vision in mind as we go forward? It's stressful, but
you don't have to. I mean, just because podcasts have to be paid for and TV has to be paid for, it didn't ruin TV. Like, you know, Game of Thrones comes out, you know, you pay like $120 a year for it, so that model works. Yeah. And then Mad Men comes out on its network, and that model works. Like, it feels to me like podcasting is a little over-read for ads right now, meaning that there's too much power with the advertisers and too much kind of immaturity for the podcasters. So you get these podcasts where it's a 20-minute podcast with like a 5-minute ad for a mattress, which TV has 8 minutes per 8 minutes out of 30 for a sitcom, which means 30 seconds, 16 times. And I mean, some podcasts seem, and some guys like Roman Mars on his 99% Invisible podcast, he only does like a thing at the end. So you can kind of do whatever you want.
Yeah, it's, it's still a little bit scary though. 'Cause I think of like, let me think of an example. Okay, so the Colbert Report.
Yes.
It was a great show. It was a great show that poked fun at all the weird things that happen in our society and how screwed up a lot of it is. And then you see his show today.
Oh, I see what's bothering you.
And it's not him at all. And you wonder where that went. Like, what happened to that? Is that actually him? And the other show was Comedy Central?
I get wow, that's a great example.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want to take our original idea and then have it be beholden to the sponsors. I want us to maintain our originality and our drive for what it is. So it's very intricate when you add sponsor revenue into the mix, because for a while we had our day jobs.
Yeah.
And I'm actually still the only one who does it full time. Everybody else has day jobs, which is great, because then there's no pressure on like me or the podcast to sustain anybody. It's all passive income for our hosts,
right?
If they make any money.
Mm-hmm.
Which please don't quit your day job.
Right. Right. Not yet, anyway.
But yeah, it's that worries me. It's that keeps me up at night, where I'm sitting there going, okay, how do we maintain this, and how do we stay grounded? How do I not let the sponsors get into my head, no matter how big they are, or no matter how much money they want to throw at us?
Well, and you just become more powerful yourself too, right?
Right.
Like if you're running the Olympics, you're like, yeah, we're going to charge you $5 million for 30 seconds. And if you're running like a crappy cable show that nobody wants, you'll take any ad for anything, basically. So the network has grown. Like you've got a big thing on your hands now.
Yeah, it's growing. We have 9 podcasts right now and 3 resources. So we need to think of a better term for it, but for lack of a term right now, blogs. But yeah, all of them focused on designer development, which I think is really great, because we were able to find that niche and just really focus on that, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Really build that community. And maybe later on we'll add some more elements into it, but that's going to be down the road.
And so how did these people come together, like in this network of podcasts? And like, what does the network do? Like you sell ads across the network. Mm-hmm. Do they cross promote each other? Do they do all the like? Sometimes.
Well, the reason we added so many podcasts was because we felt there was a need to get more opinions out there, or more talk around specific conversations. So all of them have their own niche inside of designer development that they focus on.
Right.
And a lot of it was just people that we thought had really cool opinions and really cool ideas and were doing really cool things.
Right.
And we said, hey, you could hold a conversation. You should hold a conversation.
Interesting.
You've got a compelling argument for a lot of things, and you're an interesting person.
Right.
You should start something.
So does the design thing mean there's a lot of women doing podcasts, or not a lot of women?
I wish. Kent, that's the one thing that we've been trying to work on.
You can't solve all the problems at once, but
I'm trying.
There's a lot of women who do, well, let's see, I say this, and I shouldn't be saying it, but feel like there's a lot of women who do podcasts. But now that I think of it, the ones I know they're comedy podcasts that 2 women do, where they talk to each other, and it's super funny. Mm-hmm. Like My Favorite Murder is one. I mean, my girlfriend listens to all of them, but there's a bunch of them.
Yeah.
But I guess I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't generalize that to the fact that lots of women do podcasts.
I wish there were more in the design and development community, but there just aren't. We had this conversation before, and it's glaringly obvious that one of our pain points is we are a bunch of like primarily white dudes that do the podcasts. And it's not to say that we haven't asked women to do them or start them. It's just, I think there's a fear. I think there's a real fear in it. I've talked to a handful of women who are so smart and should be doing it, but they're so hesitant. They're so hesitant.
Like so for tech, the thing that you hear is that women weren't encouraged to do. Well, everyone in the system blames like the other, like, so the schools blame the other schools and all that. But roughly speaking, it's that women weren't particularly encouraged to do technology when they were younger. Although I would argue a lot of guys who do technology weren't encouraged to do technology. They were encouraged to go out and play sports, and they did it anyway. But what is it in podcast, like in talking?
I think it's all of the harassment. I think a lot of women are scared of being harassed.
What is the? Oh wait, okay.
Because they're still vulnerable. They're still putting their opinions out there, and it's very easy for people to find the people on social media, through their job websites, all of that stuff.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of fear in the harassment aspect of it. That's what I've been hearing the most. I could be wrong these days.
No, well, so You've probably gone back and listened to all 50 of my podcasts, but
yes.
No. But I've had a bunch of women on, and every time, like I've done the same thing every time, where I'm like, well, it's kind of a thing, but not really a thing. And one of the themes has been women describing, like in detail, like, no, there's definite harassment. Mm-hmm. It's on the streets of San Francisco. It's in the boardrooms of Silicon Valley. Here's exactly how it works, and you're wrong. Like, thanks for not harassing me, but it does go on all the time. Mm-hmm. So I guess I shouldn't be surprised that you're saying that the reason that a woman with a podcast would feel the same concern.
Yeah, I think that there's just a lot of fear, and there's a lot of imposter syndrome too. There's so much imposter syndrome with women, and
explain what that is.
It's there with men too, but so imposter syndrome is when you feel like you don't deserve the credit that you're being given for something you've done, or you feel like you are given a position that you didn't earn.
Yeah. Silicon Valley CEOs say this all the time.
Yeah.
Like CEO. And some of them are right, by the way. Some are like, yeah, you're really not a CEO. But,
yeah. No, it is. I think it is more women than it is men. I hear it so much more from women.
Is that true? I believe it.
I think so. It's what I've been hearing.
Yeah.
More or less, if I ask a woman to do a show, they'll say, 1, they don't know what to talk about. 2, they don't want to do it alone.
Yeah.
Or 3, they don't feel like they have anything to say.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really, I hadn't thought about that at all.
Yeah.
Because you think about the performing arts, and I view podcasts kind of like a performance. Because it is true that people do just criticize you. Like, people will come up to me after a podcast and go, that one's kind of stupid. Right? Like, they'll be like, you were kind of boring.
Thank you.
Yeah. But of course, you do that all the time. If I see somebody in a movie,
yeah,
I'm like,
totally.
that was naked.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
whatever.
Totally.
Like, she kind of sucked in that movie. But, of course, she's like a trained actress and talented and makes millions of dollars. But so when you're on the radio or doing a podcast, people just come to you to do that.
Yeah.
So
I don't know what it is about that, though. I'm trying to figure out what it is that makes people so comfortable to come up to you and tell you exactly what they think of you or something.
Because you put it out there. I think it's because you put it out onto a podcast and you're like, you're thinking,
now people are your friends who can just talk to you about this stuff.
Well, and like, I get
all right.
Well, that happens too. So you've probably had this where people forget that they weren't in the conversation with you.
Yes.
So they'll come up and they're like, about that thing, like I think this and I think that. And you're like, oh yeah, you're supposed to think I'm talking to you.
Right.
But of course they weren't in the room. You were like interacting with someone else. And
right.
so that's also though why a lot of women have come on the podcast, because they were like, yeah, I heard her story. You got to hear this other story. It's even like more insane. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's the good side of it.
Yeah. Well, the other interesting thing about podcasting and the listeners and the listeners in general are that and kind of why I want more people to come on to podcasts, because it's a great way to work out some of your anxieties.
Yeah.
Like,
did I help you with the bakery thing? Was that pretty helpful?
Yeah. If
good.
You want to learn something, just talk about it.
Yeah.
That's the easiest way to learn. And maybe you sound like an idiot, but you learned something about yourself, or you learned how to get better. So,
well, almost all the personal stories are pretty interesting. Like when people want to come on and tell me about their company, it's the worst.
Yeah, I hate that.
Not your company, because you're running a podcast network. But a lot, like, that's the worst. When people come in, they're like, yeah, my mom died and then I came here and then this happened. You're like, wait a minute, that's like a whole, like there's a whole thing here and there's like a whole journey here and there's a whole story here.
Yeah.
So women not doing podcasts because they're thinking that it's, they don't like the sound of their voice, any of that?
Nobody likes the sound of their voice.
You like the sound of your voice, right?
No.
Do you know?
I don't know anybody who actually looks at, if I ever hear somebody come into the studio and say, la, 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 ooh, yeah, I sound real good.
What if they're
I will be amazed.
What if they're like a professional voice actor?
I feel like even if you're a professional voice actor, you don't like your voice.
I guess that's true. Do you do like the vocal fry thing? Do you know what that is?
Yeah.
Do you have an opinion about it? Or is that really like inside the beltway?
No, it's not. I think it has a place, but
it drives me nuts, but
I can't do. Well, the thing that I hate is when people sit on it, like they just are lazy and they let that be the whole voice is just fry.
Yeah.
It drives me insane.
Oh, but there's a whole, like, this is an area I should not get into, but there's a whole thing where it's like an anti-women thing. Have you heard that?
What?
So young women do it. Vocal fry the most.
Okay.
Other broadcasters say you're being lazy. But there's, and I've heard this is like one of those things where you hear something, you're like, I can't remember what the other argument is, but there's some argument about it where you're not supposed to criticize people for anything. Yeah. But I'm like, it's just bad radio. Like you just sound kind of weird.
Yes, it does sound weird, and it is a little bit obnoxious.
NPR is militant about it. Like they're militant about people like being like having really bad voices, and you're just like, but it's radio. Like, like try. Like I get that you can do it because you're on the microphone, but anyway, when you get bigger than NPR, you remember my advice.
I'll remember your advice.
So what do you do about getting women into podcasting? Like, what do you like?
Just keep talking to them. Just keep talking. Well, I guess the thing that's been really helpful is the last time I was on Design Details, I mentioned that this is one problem that we're trying to solve.
Yeah.
And we know it's a problem, and we just need people to step up. I had one woman in particular come up to me and say, I heard your thing. I heard your shout out for more women podcasters.
Yeah.
And I want to do it. And I was like, awesome, amazing.
Yeah.
Let's get it started. I will help you out. What do you need? Let's sit down. And it was kind of one of those things where it got off course a little bit, but I'm meeting up with her tomorrow actually to talk about it. So I'm really hoping that I can help her and encourage her enough to actually get like a pilot going, because that would be incredible.
Is it a technical thing at all? Like, is it that because when you start a podcast, it's like, it's a weird nerdy tech. It's not hard
so
tech.
Nerdy.
It's just weird audio tech.
Yeah.
So to be into audio tech is like just it's just weird.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, is it that at all, or is it more the performance anxiety stuff?
I think it's all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's a combination of all of the things. Unless you have somebody who's really into audio gear.
Right. That's 90% guys.
Yeah.
Like just general, right? Like,
in general, yeah. You're going to have more dudes that are into audio tech. But I'm starting to get into it more and more. But I'm definitely not as good at the hardware as I am at software stuff. Yeah. Like software is more my jam. The hardware side of it is super cool. Yeah. I'm just really intimidated by it because it's so expensive.
Yeah, see, I just sidestep the whole thing. I just don't edit. Problem solved.
There you go.
I don't need to have half the technical skills that you do. Like, not 1/10.
Just don't edit anything. Yeah. Just whatever happens. Hey, I love that.
People have done live radio forever. It works just fine. True. So that's I'm sure you're way more talented than I am at the technical part of this stuff.
Probably not. But I appreciate it.
So what happens now for for your network? Like what's next?
What happens next? That's a great question. I have no idea.
That's the honest answer. That's true, like for all companies.
Yeah, it's so true, and I don't think enough people talk about it. I don't think enough people say.
Yeah, because you're
be perfectly honest.
Because you're being genuine and honest, which is fabulous. But everyone else just fakes it. Everyone else is like, "Oh, I've got 3 points. I know what I'm doing.
Cool.
We're gonna do this. We're gonna do that." I saw
that sounds awesome.
Somebody posted today something. There was one of these 40 under 40 things that came out. 40 great people under the age of 40. And somebody posted a thing where they're like, well, if you ever feel bad about those, go back and look at one from 10 years ago, and you've never nobody went anywhere. The people who think they have it all figured out and tell you they have it all figured out, don't actually have it all figured out.
No, they're putting on a performance for you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all a performance.
Yeah,
and it drives me crazy. But I try to be as genuine as I can, and if I'm being genuinely honest about where we're going with it. There are so many things that are up in the air right now that if any of them land, I will be excited.
Yeah, you started a business. You're describing a on its way successful business.
Well, I hope it's successful. To me it's successful. To me it's a small victory, but it's not a win.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. There's always going to be that way to improve and get better, which I think is great. And I feel really lucky to be in this position.
Yeah.
Just because, I mean, how many people actually get that opportunity to do something that they really, really love?
Well, none. And you don't really hear what you're describing, too, because you're also doing the company the hard way, which is you're You found something you like. You're out generating the revenue yourself. The rest of us just go out and have a VC, like give us like $10 million and then just spend their money for like 5 years.
Oh, that's terrifying. That's like, to me, that's more scary than actually going out and getting the money.
They're both hard. I shouldn't be glib about raising money. It's really hard and all that. But I mean, what you're doing is you're making it happen like, like a classic entrepreneur.
I don't know. I've always thought that it was weird that you could just go and get money for an idea. So
it's super weird.
It's so weird.
Yeah.
Why? How is that even a thing?
It's a thing.
How is that even a thing?
It's a thing because once in a while it works and you make like $100 billion. That's how it's a thing. Like once in a while you invest in Uber and you're worth $100 billion and you're Mark Zuckerberg and you're giving $3 billion away to get rid of disease. Like that's how it works.
Ugh.
But it's weird.
But it's so strange to me, and I didn't want that pressure when we started.
Yeah.
Which is why we decided to do it the hard way and see if it actually had legs on its own.
Yeah, and it does. But it's very weird. Like if in your hometown of Minnesota, you went and asked the bank for like $200,000 for a house, they'd be like, no.
No. And
here,
nobody would expect you to even ask that.
Right.
They would say, what are you, crazy?
Yeah. In Silicon Valley, I need $5 million for a thing that helps me choose the best popsicles for me. And they'll be like, well, that's could be big. All right. Like here's $4 million. And someone else, I mean, it is ridiculous, but
yeah,
it's where it's the capital city. It's where it's all happening. And it's all kind of happening now.
It's insane. Yeah, I tried to explain that to a few friends back home, and nobody gets it. Nobody understands it. And I don't even understand it. That's why I didn't want to deal with it at first.
Yeah, but now you're right in the middle of it.
Yep. And not to say that we haven't had people say that they would help us if we wanted to go after.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing, too, is if you have a business that's working, it can just work.
Yeah.
Like, there's some business, like, what would you do with $10 million? Like, do you have, like, there's companies that need $10 million. They need to build a plant or they need to hire 50 people to make it happen. Like, you may not need $10 million to build a successful podcast network.
No, I think if we actually had 10 million, or someone was like, "Oh, we're gonna give you $10 million," we would probably bake out more podcasts, bake out the network more, probably get more branches, like subgroups of podcasts, like clusters, I guess, and then do events like that. I think would be our vision,
right?
To take a lot more of it to the road and try and spread it out to speak to people who are in Minnesota or to speak to people who are in Texas or wherever those pockets are where you've got like a small community, but it needs to get bigger, or try to get into high schools and talk to high schoolers or, educational stuff. Educational stuff has been huge for us lately. We've been trying so hard to figure out, is there a niche for us here? Can we pull more together to teach people or to just spread the knowledge instead of holding it? Because I think that goes back to like one of the issues I had when I was growing up too, or in these dead-end jobs, was that there were so many people who had all of this breadth of knowledge and they didn't want to share a drop of it with me.
Right. Oh, right.
And so I'm sitting there going, why is that a thing? You only make it better if you share.
Yeah.
I guess technically the term would be open sourcing. But if you just share the knowledge, it's going to be so much better for the whole community.
Right.
So I think that's one of our goals is to, how do we open that up? How do we share that more? How do we make it so it's not scary for people to want to share what they've learned?
So what brought you to this, like, intellectually? Like, were there things that you were reading? Are there movies that you're watching? Like, what is, like, going on in that part of your life that brings you to sort of creating stories and information that travel around the world to millions of people? Like, is there...
I don't think there's any one...
Was there like
I wish I had a really good story for this. I really do.
Oh, by the way, what's your first computer?
I
always ask guys that, so I should ask you that.
It was.
Was that wasn't the thing though? It wasn't like.
It was a. Oh God.
A lot of times with engineers, it's their first. If it wasn't your first computer, then that's not a thing.
Well, I actually owned my first laptop. I don't remember what model it was off the top of my head, but it was the black MacBook.
Wow.
Do you remember that one?
I don't remember it, but I was using PCs, so.
Oh, you were on PCs?
Yeah.
When I was growing up, my parents had this Windows 95 machine.
Yeah.
I don't remember what it was.
So what was the thing that kind of made you say, I can create stories, or I can go, like, there must have been something that you weren't doing just whatever everyone else is doing in the hometown.
But the problem was because that was the name of the game.
Right.
That's what you did. You didn't really rock the boat. You just kind of went with it.
Right.
You took whatever life gave you, really. Like,
right.
You didn't really go out and pursue much. It was just like, here, this is what you're going to be good at. Oh, and actually, you know what? I took one of those personality tests to figure out, or was it a college aptitude test to figure out what I would be good at if I went to college, which in my town, not too many people went to college, but you really wanted to. And I did, and I just bit the bullet and took a bunch of like student loans.
Yep.
But this college aptitude test, all of my classmates were getting things like doctor, lawyer, teacher.
Yeah.
And I took mine, and I remember getting my first 3 picks. I could be a paralegal.
Nice.
A ballpark announcer.
Oh, hey, that's good.
Or a puppeteer.
Whoa.
And I was like, what? What is that? I'm so not normal. I'm not normal.
Wow.
I didn't get like the normal jobs. Who gets puppeteer?
Is that even a job? Like, can you get paid to be a puppeteer?
I was like, how is that even in the system? How many people get puppeteer?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they should have taken you out of school right away and sent you to Hollywood or Silicon Valley or New York or somewhere.
What they should have done was like, this girl can't do anything. You know, that's how I felt when I took it, because I wasn't getting your standard job. I was getting these really, other than maybe paralegal, but gross. No offense
lawyer.
to anybody who is a paralegal.
No, but you could be a lawyer as well as a paralegal, probably.
Yeah, probably. And I just I didn't like the idea of it at all. But I was like, okay, baseball announcer. I guess that's what we're going to go for.
Okay, so this isn't crazy at all, then, that you're running a podcast network.
No, not really. I mean, yeah, I kind of took that and ran with it. So after that, I did a bunch of like audio stuff, and I got more involved in like choirs and jazz choirs to help with that performance anxiety.
Yeah.
Because it's awesome. Performance anxiety is awesome if you can control it.
Every kid should go. This is my parenting theory or raising people theory, is like, you should go do theater in college. Yeah. Then don't go into the theater. Like, you're not going to be an actor and get paid for it. But you will be so much better at like relating to other people and listening to people and performing in front of people, and that's really helpful.
Yeah, yes.
But you've got to get off but you have to get off the wagon. Like, don't then go to Broadway. Well, you can do that too if you're really good. But I went to Northwestern, so everybody's like, Stephen Colbert went to school with me. Yep. Like, everybody's in theater at Northwestern. But,
it's great.
Do it, but don't stay.
Yeah, do it, but don't stay.
So tell me about, and we'll wrap up on Spec, but you play games, and you described a couple of the games you play to me.
Yeah.
What are these things? Like, they're computer games.
Yeah.
Like, what are they? They're weird. I mean, they're weird to me. Like, I don't play any computer games, but the ones I see on TV and the ones you described don't seem like the same games. Like, what are these things?
Yeah, I just got back into them. I thought they were really immature and juvenile when I was in college, so I stopped playing video games, but I used to really like it when I was younger. And then I got into college and didn't do it anymore. And then when I got out of college, I started playing Borderlands again. And I found out how much I love couch co-op games. So
what's couch co-op? Like, explain couch co-op.
So couch co-op is when you're playing with somebody else who's actually sitting right next to you in the same room. So I was the sniper, and I loved being the sniper shooter, because then I could just like kind of run up and hide and shoot these monsters.
Right.
And
okay, so this is a classic
teammate who
shooting
was like
game.
The berserker, and he'd go in and he would just like light everything up. But I always had his back. It was kind of fun. I was like, I get to like get it when you're in trouble, but you've got the majority of it. You can just take all of that. it was great, and it got me back into it. So I started playing a little bit of that, and then I got back into more PC games, personal computer, when Firewatch came out.
What's Firewatch?
And Firewatch is this amazing, beautiful game. And I can't remember who built it. Oh, no. But it's... Anyway, if you're interested, look it up. You can find it pretty easily. It's called Firewatch. Right. But basically, you're just this park ranger who is by himself, and it's just you. You're by yourself, isolated in the wilderness. And the only other person you interact with is this person on a walkie-talkie, and her name's Delilah, and she's apparently another... I can't remember if she's like the head... I can't remember, but she's like another, why am I blanking on the word?
But you don't, another park ranger?
Yes, she's another park
You literally just used that word.
I know, I used it and now it's gone.
You can only use them once.
Apparently, brain, God, don't fail me now. But yeah, so she's on this, walkie-talkie, and she'll talk to you, and you get to know her, and you have this relationship with her, but you never actually meet her.
Right.
And so then you're kind of talking about each other's lives, and she gets to know you, and you get to know her, and it gets to be kind of like flirty.
Right.
Which is super weird.
Right.
But you can like decide how you want to answer her.
It's just not like what I imagine games to be like at all.
Yeah, totally not at all, right?
But it's really cool.
Yeah, it's so cool. And it's also got this element of thrill to it, because you're trying to find these girls that have gone missing in the woods. Uh-huh. And that's your first mission.
Ooh, that took a dark turn there.
And then that turns into like you try to find this boy that went missing in the woods, and it's this, I won't spoil anything for you, but it gets scary at times, because you have to go on these like weird missions where you see like an abandoned tent, and oh my God, is there somebody in the tent, or is the killer still here? So you get really nervous. But, okay, and this is kind of a spoiler if you haven't played the game, but nothing actually happens to you. Mm-hmm. It's just your anxieties. Yeah. Which is kind of cool.
That's really cool.
Because then you learn to control that. Yeah. But at the same time, it's like a thrill. Mm-hmm. So it's like this weird, like, realistic, like, flirty relationship thing mixed with like the fear of the unknown. Wow. And it's just gets really intense. And some people really hate the end, but I actually really liked it. Right. Because it was open-ended enough that you got to use your imagination.
Is that why you play these games? Like, is it the imagination part? Or, I mean, it's not like you have a ton of free time, I assume.
No, I don't. Oh, yeah, that's the other thing. I don't really have that much free time, so usually it's in very short spurts. So I can't play anything that's going to take my attention away for too long. So the thing I like about Firewatch is that they do it in days. So it'll be day one, and then you...
Yeah, right.
And then you just go through whatever has to happen in day one, and you can choose to leave after day two.
Right. So you don't stay up for an entire weekend and just like...
Yeah.
Not sleep.
Yeah. And the only reason I did get through that entire game originally was because I was on this podcast called Vicarious for a bit. Mm-hmm. And we shut it down, unfortunately.
Why?
It was just a lot. We had like 4 people on mics, and then the conversation got weird and muddled. And it was fun because it was a bunch of friends talking about the things they do to get away from work.
Right. Did anybody sound the same on it?
Yeah, that was the other thing, too. Funny. I was the only one that was identifiable because I was the only woman on it.
One of the podcasts, I think it's one of the ones with 2 women. I don't know which one it is. It doesn't matter. But they both sound this. It's really funny. Like they both really do kind of sound the same. And they even know it. So they joke about it and stuff. But like, I can imagine with like 4 people, you're like, okay, which guy is that? Which guy is that?
Yeah, totally. And the only reason you would know who somebody else was is if you said their name. Right. And then you kind of got it for maybe like a minute, and then you forgot altogether. But it was a great show, and it got me back into like gaming and stuff. Yeah.
What do you watch on TV?
Oh.
Any favorite shows right now?
So lately I've been watching a lot of The Great British Bake Off.
What in the hell is this?
Have you seen it?
No, I haven't seen this.
Good.
God, every time I ask people this question, I'm hoping they'll say like Mr. Robot, and then we can gossip about it. What actually happens is they tell me about some other amazing show I need to be. So what's the Great British Bake Off?
It's a PBS show.
And aren't you tired of bakeries?
Yeah. No, it's amazing. Okay, so it's this show. It's like a contestant show, and the best part is the judges' names are Paul Hollywood and Mary Berry. No joke.
Wow.
No joke.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
that's good TV.
And the contestants are all these people, British people, right, that are coming in and baking these cakes and doing these challenges and getting eliminated and all this stuff. But the best part is it's not what you think of when you think of reality TV. When I think of reality TV, what I think of is like a lot of like cringeworthy moments and weird situations where you really like hate somebody because of their personality.
Yep.
And with the Great British Bake Off, it's not like that at all. Everybody's really encouraging, and even Mary Berry and Paul Hollywood are really encouraging of the contestants.
See, it makes me smile just listening to those names. Yep.
It's amazing. And it makes me feel so good when I watch it. Because even if people get eliminated, they're still, it's like they haven't lost their dignity.
Yeah, right.
After they lose. They go home and they say, well, that was fun. I'll keep baking.
I like it.
It's like, okay, that's probably good.
That's fantastic advice.
Keep doing you. Yeah. Cool. But it's great. I love it. That's definitely my favorite.
I like it. Well, I think we've done this thing. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so.
I think
unless you have anything else,
we should come back and I want to hear about like how it goes with it had never occurred to me that women wouldn't be taking to podcasting for some of the reasons you laid out.
Yeah.
Tech, I feel like I've pretty much heard it, like what the reasons are. I had never heard about it, thought about podcasting. So you should come back at some point and tell us like what happened with the women you tried to recruit.
Yeah, I totally will.
And
I hope
I predict
it's positive.
It's going to be positive. So I have a podcast coming up with a guy who I interviewed, just so you realize like how well you're going to do. This guy, and he was an immigrant. So you're kind of like an immigrant from Minnesota.
Sure, yeah.
Came to this country, washed dishes to buy his first computer, and had started a company. And so I interviewed him about his company with a tone of like, oh, yeah, it's really tough, but good work, for getting your own little company, whatever. And a couple weeks ago, the news comes out. Like, Microsoft has acquired his company to make it a key part of their, like, one of their product suites. But clearly he's hit it big in a way. And so since my podcast is characterized by my being wrong about everything, I'm going to have him back and be like, I didn't say you wouldn't succeed, but I wasn't acting like you were going to. And what's it like to succeed? So I'm sure you will be back to tell me about how you've taken over, acquired NPR.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Acquired NPR. Is that even possible?
I don't know.
I don't think
it's Silicon Valley. We can do anything. Yeah, probably. You could probably do it. All right.
Yes.
So how do people find your pod? You probably don't want them to find you, but how do they find the Spec Podcast Network?
Yeah. So,
or you?
Yeah, I'm pretty easy to track down too. So the Spec Network, if anybody's interested, is spec.fm, spec.fm. That's the network where all of our stuff is. And then for me, I'm on Twitter. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me. And my Twitter handle is @SarahBurris.
Right.
Like the three-headed dog that guards the gates of hell.
And if there's any women who think they have an idea for a design podcast, like how do they?
Yeah, and then if there are
weirdly, a lot of women listen to this podcast.
Yes,
so.
Perfect. And then if there are any women that are interested in getting involved or getting something started, you can hit me up on Twitter too. I don't like to give out my email just because.
I got it.
So Twitter works better, and then I'm also on the Spec Network Slack channel. If anybody is in there, it's pretty easy to get in, but I understand if like Slack is overwhelming for you, because it's definitely starting to get overwhelming for me too.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Hey, thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, Kent. This was amazing.
All right, my guest today has been Sarah Marie. May or may not be a Jackson, I don't know. But Sarah Marie, thank you so much. This has been the Something Venture podcast. Thanks for listening.